guys, and welcome back to the Nourishing Routes channel. I'm here on a weekend. I've just had a lovely cup of green tea and I thought it'd be really helpful for me to share you one of the key elements of Nourishing Routes today in more depth, which is compassion, and particularly self-compassion. So I'm going to be defining those concepts today so that we can get our head around them, because I think they're absolutely key to understanding the Nourishing Routes philosophy, as well as developing a positive relationship with our food and body. In fact, learning more about compassion and applying it to my life has been essential to recovering from disordered eating and finally finding a way to enjoy life and live it to the full. So firstly then, what is compassion? Well, compassion is simply showing kindness to others, but also identifying whether someone's suffering or in pain, and then actually taking action to alleviate their suffering and help them. But what is self-compassion? Well, simply, self-compassion is an extension of compassion, so we should show compassion to ourselves. So that means that we identify when our own selves are suffering or going through pain, or maybe when we're not in alignment with our lives, and we take steps to alleviate that suffering and be kind to ourselves, just as we might do a best friend. Or we might also be kind and loving to ourselves just in the way that a mother might do with a newborn baby or a loving child. But if you think about it, when do we ever treat ourselves that way? I mean, there are people who do it, people who've understood the concept of compassion, but most of us live in a society where we are told to be the best, strive to compete against other people, and really beat ourselves up for not being perfect or good enough just as we are. This means that we can become very uncompassionate to ourselves. I mean, for myself, I lived very uncompassionate for a number of years. I was always striving for the next best grade, to be successful in a career, and I was a complete workaholic. I was in no way self-compassionate, and the voice inside that I call my inner mean girl was so vicious. It used to tell me off, it used to make me feel really guilty, it used to make me even feel bad about having 2 cups of tea in the same day, because I didn't feel like I deserved it. However, when I learned about compassion, although I was a bit sceptical at first, I learned that we don't have to live that way. We don't have to live with this inner critical voice inside, because ultimately we're actually made to be compassionate individuals. Many of us feel okay with being kind and loving towards others. I mean, when you think of a friend who's upset, what person wouldn't want to go over to them and give them a hug and just tell them everything is going to be okay? But when it comes to ourselves and we notice that we're not feeling well, or we're feeling overworked and tired, instead we tell ourselves we need to work harder, we should just man up, get to action, and before we know it, we've worked ourselves into the ground, feel tired, and ultimately lacking in self-worth. In fact, when we don't show compassion to ourselves, this leads to a downward spiral of self-neglect. But funnily, society tells us that we haven't got time for self-compassion. No, instead, as I said before, we should be working harder, faster and longer, but always for somebody else's profit in the end. But we ourselves are the ones who are suffering. When we can learn that we do deserve compassion, and to notice when we're feeling unwell, or that we feel like we haven't got enough energy, or when we feel even as though our life path is not on the right lines, we have the right to question that and give ourselves our own hug from the inside. We should be able to acknowledge that when we deserve the care that we so lovingly need, just like a mother would do with her child, we really need to embrace the art of self-care and even just giving ourselves a hug. Now that might seem a little bit strange. I mean, I'm not condoning that you go out into the middle of the street and start hugging yourself all the time. But for me, hugging yourself doesn't have to be physical. It comes in the sense of feeling that you are worthy of love. And sometimes that can happen through treating yourself to some of your favourite things, taking time out for self-care, and also enjoying the activities that really light you up as a person. For myself, learning about self-compassion has been absolutely eye-opening. I knew that it had helped me to recover from an eating disorder, but I didn't really understand the scientific evidence behind it until I really started looking at the research myself. What I found was so eye-opening. I found out that lots and lots of research has shown that the more self-compassionate we've become, instead of becoming egocentric or unproductive, it actually has the opposite effect. In fact, self-compassionate individuals tend to be less stressed, more productive, in better health, they engage in better health behaviours, and they're also able to overcome more traumatic events. There's even research to show that when you're self-compassionate, you're more able to overcome things like mental illness. And for me, I can definitely resonate with that because self-compassion has been so key to eating disorder recovery. For example, I realised that I didn't have to feel guilty for upping my food intake or increasing my weight or eating more calories than I normally would. Without self-compassion, I would try to follow a recovery meal plan, but I'd really feel bad at the end of the day. I'd beat myself up, say that I wasn't worthy, and ultimately just trying to recover to please somebody else. But once I started bringing more compassion into my life and following the steps towards self-compassion, things really started to change. For the first time in my life, I actually wanted to recover for me, nobody else. And when you make that decision based on the fact that you want to nurture yourself and alleviate your own suffering, that's when the huge leaps forward start to be made. For myself, I started gaining weight without judgment. I started eating the foods that I loved without judgment. And I started to live and enjoy life to the full. In fact, since about 2 years ago, since I started really incorporating compassion into my life, I have experienced so many amazing things. It's brought abundance into my life, and it's even put in so many new friends who also believe in the philosophy of compassionate living. So on that note, I'm not going to bore you with too many details because I'm sure I'm going to be talking about compassion in much more detail in upcoming videos. But I'd just like to reassure you that you do deserve compassion, and that for me it's been one of the key elements to nourishing myself from the inside out and really learning the art of self-love and putting it into practice. I wholeheartedly believe that you can learn this practice too, and I can promise you that the outcomes will be limitless, beautiful, and you will be able to step into your true and authentic self. So I'll wish you goodbye on that note, and I can't wait to see you soon for some more upcoming videos. In the meantime, if you have a comment or you want to describe how you feel about self-compassionate living or what you do to make yourself feel more worthy of love, then please just comment down below. You can also subscribe to the channel or visit my website at www.nourishingroutes.com. It would be, again, great to see you, hear from you, and hopefully I will see you soon. Bye!